24/04/2013. The Rana Plaza factory in Savar, in the outskirts of Bangladesh's capital Dhaka, collapsed. The building fell to its feet with thousands still left inside. The building had been deemed unsafe and on the verge of collapse. So why were those garment workers still left inside? At the bottom of the food chain, workers' lives seem to be worth less than the clothing they produce. Over 1,000 people lost their lives and many have been left permanently disabled.
A year on from the biggest modern-day industrial disaster of our times, has anything actually changed in our billion-dollar garments industry, where so many are enslaved?
Accidents are not strange for people working within the garments industry, and in Bangladesh, water poisoning and factory fires both preceded and followed this collapse. There is no denying the grandeur and capabilities of Bangladesh's garments industry. It's one that is set to take over from China. With its low prices, the industry has grown to be valued at £13 billion, employing 3.6 million Bangladeshis, mainly women. Garment production counts for 80% of the country's annual GDP, a consistently growing GDP regardless of the violence that has plagued the country in recent years. Political turmoil has engulfed the country, worsening in the last 2 years after the erection of domestic courts, bringing to surface deep-rooted tensions dividing the nation's politics. Economically, though, the country has been flourishing. The Rana Plaza complex housed bankers and people of all spectrums of the workforce. But what shocked people in the wake of the disaster was that even after cracks had shown on the building and all other workers were evacuated, garment workers were ordered to continue as normal. The fashion industry is often projected as both glamorous and beautiful, one that is creative and full of splendor. Here at the Bangladeshi High Commission in London, people have gathered to celebrate fashion, its beauty and achievements in Bangladesh, creating a selling point for the country where investment from the West is vital.
Absolutely super.
We have ethical manufacturing. We have complaints, we have women who are working, we are talking about a revolution in empowerment of women, we're talking about looking at minimum wages and revolutionary change for that.
A year on from the anniversary of the Rana Plaza complex collapse, it's as though the ill fate of those workers has been whitewashed at this gathering.
The Bangladeshi garment industry has moved up so much.
One individual said, "That was one accident. What about all of the good?" The Rana Plaza factory collapse was no isolated incident, and it is these workers who make up the majority of those working in the industry in Bangladesh, alongside the fact that the garments industry is the single biggest contributor to Bangladesh's annual GDP, the moneymaker in the country. At the mentioning of the country's garments industry and what more can be done to improve the conditions for these workers, deafening noises of Western buyers and their driving down of prices engulfed the room. The Bangladeshi High Commissioner Mijarul Kayes did his best to avoid any conversation about factories and the country's garments industry, focusing on hosting his model guest.
We're not taking to task, we're not asking the buyers to behave. We're not asking for ethical buying.
I asked Alan Duncan, British Minister for International Development, about the Bangladeshi High Commissioner's comments and what's been put in place since the last time I spoke to him.
Primarily, those who are responsible for the law of a country are the ones who are responsible for implementing it, and that means that the government of Bangladesh has to do its bit. The best brands already have the highest standards. And it was a Bangladeshi owner of Rana Plaza who is culpable for the collapse of that building and the death of 1,100 people. So to say that the Bangladesh government has completed its work and done its bit is completely untrue, and I think the donor community and indeed the industrial community would find that very disappointing and would regard that as a disincentive to investing further. What we want to see is the donor community, brands, and crucially the government of Bangladesh all working together to improve standards. And that's why we are working with the government to try and recruit hundreds of extra structural surveyors so that we can look at all of the factories and make sure that they're safe. It's why we're working with the International Labour Organization to ensure that standards in these factory buildings is high.
On his recent visit, Alan Duncan met both these workers and the recently re-elected Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina.
I mean, the sector is a great success story for Bangladesh, but if the standards don't catch up with the growth in the industry, then people are not going to invest in Bangladesh in the future. So I went to Rana Plaza itself, I went to the Centre for the Rehabilitation of the Paralysed to see some of the victims. But most importantly, we were talking with the Industrial Alliance and Accord about how we can improve the safety of buildings, both in terms of their structure and things like their fire precautions inside. So this is a two-way thing. It's the brands, it's the government. Everyone needs to work together to make sure that the industry can catch up with the growth that it has enjoyed over the last 25 years.
Outside of parliamentarians, activists on various fronts have been campaigning for change. Sam Maher from Labour Behind the Label spoke to me in our studios about what's been put into place over the last year. Organisations like Labour Behind the Label run a number of campaigns, both to raise awareness and to incite change in the industry. One of the things being worked on by Labour Behind the Label is compensation for workers.
For the first time ever, we've now been able to establish a process for delivering compensation, which is called the arrangement. And that has on board the Bangladesh government, the employers, the trade unions, various NGOs, and it's been designed by experts from the UN. That's been a real achievement to get such a system together over the course of just 1 year. But obviously for those workers that are involved, it's been a very long wait. Those workers that are making their clothes, they're the same as you and I, you know, they have their families and they have their lives. And this is a job that they do in order to get the clothes to us and really respecting the human that is behind the clothes that we wear.
But is this translating to the people on the streets of London?
We're here in Tower Hamlets, at the heart of the Bangladeshi community here in Britain. Everybody's looking for a bargain, but at whose cost is that bargain being bought?
So when you see things in this market where they have sort of like 6 for £10 and all these promotions to try and incite people, how does that make you feel?
At times I think, oh, well, that's great, because if I was to go to High Street, i.e., you know, central London, it wouldn't really be worth it and whatnot. And I think it's generally kind of the same things. So I think, yeah, okay, that's all right. That's value for money, bargain, you know.
Speaking of the West End, we spoke to a few shoppers there too.
No, it's just like, you think about looks, and then if you like it, you buy it, and if not, then you just leave it and walk away.
No, not really. Just if it looks nice, I'll buy it. If not, then why should I care?
Not really. We don't think about that. We just buy it. Yeah, because obviously the people that are selling it to us just want their money, so they wouldn't tell us, so it would be more better if we knew where it was coming from.
Raising awareness. When the words ethical fashion spring to mind, you think green, you think vintage, and you think of activism and a job for middle-class women. It's not something we think about when we go shopping, but why is that the case? Islam teaches us to be ethical beings, conscious of our actions and conscious of our footprint on the earth and the implications of these actions.
Should generally be.
On a visit to London, I asked Dr. Yasser Qadi about this.
Our Prophet ﷺ had 2 garments. He would wear one for Jum'ah, for Eid, and he would have another one. He wouldn't have a whole, closet full of clothes. And yet each one of us has plenty of clothes. Most of the companions, some of them only had 1 garment, and therefore when they had to wash the garment, they could not go outside until the garment dried. This is the reality of those generations. For us, we have now a wealth that is beyond our means and understanding. Each one of us needs to take into account how much we are acquiring and how much we are throwing away, and every one of us should put a healthy balance. Our religion tells us to conserve as much as possible.
When they're first cut, they don't look like.
Made in Europe are one organisation going full throttle in campaigning and raising awareness of these issues.
Our Every Garment is a Name campaign is about appreciating our clothes. It comes from the sunnah of when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam received a piece of clothing, he made dua for it. He recognised that it was made by someone. It wasn't just a piece of clothing that he had received. And it's something that we don't appreciate. We have a disconnect between the people that make our clothes and when we wear it. So it's about appreciating that there's someone that has made our clothes and giving them justice to what they're doing for us.
Brands including Walmart, Benetton, Mango, Matalan, Monsoon, H&M and Primark all produce in Bangladesh, providing jobs, economic growth and investment into the industry. Soon after the collapse, a universally binding accord was set up, one that over 150 retailers have currently signed up to. There are some who have refused to sign the accord, binding them to conduct safety inspections and training in factories. Companies including Benetton and US giants Walmart and Gap have refused to sign. As a result of the accord, a year on, safety experts have been hired and mass inspections have begun inside some garment factories.
It's pretty much obvious that there will be disappointments, but there is also a corrective action plan to follow. So voicing out instant disappointments is not the best thing to do at this point, because the guidelines have been laid out by Accord and Alliance very specifically, which are very challenging guidelines for the industry, and it is not possible for us to change everything overnight. So before we've been given a chance to rectify our current state, I think it's a little too unfair to say that, we are not complying or we are not good.
There's a chief inspector that's managing the inspection programme, and inspectors are being sent out to all of the factories that are listed over time. So up till now it's around 300 factories that have been inspected. A number of factories have had to be closed, but in most cases the improvements can be made without closing the factories. So over a period of time the improvements are made to make sure that they're not death traps anymore.
The Bangladeshi government has raised wages for garment workers and amended its labour law to now include the freedom to form trade unions. But this new law doesn't seem to be being implemented. Industry leaders have said many factory owners have not implemented the minimum wage, which is now £51 per month. The minimum was taken up from the previous sum of £23 a month. Just 2 months ago, Human Rights Watch said that garment factory workers who try to form trade unions are being intimidated and threatened with murder. The New York-based organisation called upon the Bangladeshi government to take action against these factory owners.
Sort of makes them think about one.
Baroness Lola Young has been working on issues around the garment sector, and speaking to her, she said that it wasn't just the workers, but the wider issues in production and manufacturing and the way in which the industry has been constructed, which is the main problem.